Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us from across Africa and beyond. I'm Jacqueline Jumah, the Director for Advocacy and Capacity Development at AfricaNenda Foundation, and it's my pleasure to open today's deep dive session. Today, we shine a spotlight on a remarkable story of innovation and impact in the webinar, the case of ZIPIT in Zimbabwe. As highlighted in our flagship State of Inclusive Instant Payment Systems, SIPS reports, instant payment systems are rapidly transforming financial services and the landscape generally. They are breaking down the long-standing barriers, bringing secure, affordable, and accessible financial services to millions. The ZIPIT, which is the Zimswitch instant payment interchange technology, stands out as one pioneering example of what's positive or what's possible when inclusivity is placed at the heart of payments innovation. Today's session is all about learning from ZIPIT's journey, the challenges faced, the breakthroughs achieved, and lessons that can inspire similar progress across the continent. We have an engaging program ahead, filled with practical insights and voices from those at the heart of Zimbabwe's digital payments revolution. So together, let's explore how inclusive instant payment systems like ZIPIT can accelerate financial inclusion for all Africans. Thank you once again for joining us and setting the stage for today's important discussion. Now, it's my pleasure to hand over to Lavender Nyamukondiwa, who is the lead instant and contactless payments at Zimswitch. She'll kick off our session with an in-depth presentation on the ZIPIT instant payment systems. Lavender is also going to bring valuable insights from the front lines of Zimbabwe's digital payments evolution, and I'm sure you'll find her perspectives both informative and engaging. So Lavender, over to you. Let's dive in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jacqueline, and good day to everyone on account of the different time zones. I won't say good afternoon or good morning. Thank you for the opportunity for Zimswitch to present to you how we introduced our instant payments and the journey so far. So allow me, before I get into the ZIPIT journey, just a minute to just give an overview of our company, Zimswitch. Just the first slide is just to show our services, our values, our vision, and what we do. Maybe you can go to the next slide. Okay, not sure, Jacqueline. I'm not seeing the next slide from here. Can you see it? Okay, I'll proceed. I suppose there is a bit of a network connectivity. So as Zimswitch, we started our operations in 1994 as an electronic funds switch. We then got, in 2020, we're designated by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe as the national payment switch, such that our mandate was then to accelerate the digital payments journey. We were then given the mandate to facilitate the switching and clearing of transactions, financial transactions, for all financial institutions in Zimbabwe and their sponsored third-party payment service providers. We're also given the mandate to avail interoperable channels for these financial transactions to be processed. So here on the slide, you'll see a bit of our journey, how we started, where we just started with the ATM as a shared platform in 1994. And then in 1996, we moved over to the point of sale machine, where we are availing that channel as an interoperable channel for our members. And then in 2011, we then introduced the mobile, which is the ZIPIT, for mobile transactions to be processed. We then moved over to account-based payments, which is your EFT transactions, and then our internet, where we are now providing e-commerce services. Maybe of note to the listeners is that our systems are EMV compliant, and we are also PCI DSS compliant. Next slide. Okay, thank you. The next slide is just highlighting the members that we have as Zimswitch. So maybe for your benefit, all the financial institutions, that is your banks, your microfinance, as well as your third-party service providers are connected to our switch. And we have over about 28 or 29 members, including microfinance institutions, banks, as well as your mobile money operators. So that's just a snippet of the members that we have on the switch that are processing payments through our system. Move over to the ZIPIT overview, which is why we are here. So ZIPIT, like Jacqueline also alluded to, stands for Zimswitch Instant Payment Interchange Technology. And it's a platform that enables instant funds transfer amongst all our financial institutions that I mentioned. So that's all 28 of them that are connected to the Zimswitch network. So it is designed to run in parallel with traditional RTGS. What I mean by that is that the ZIPIT system is set up to process high volume, low value transactions, and the RTGS system then processes low volume, high value transactions. So the ZIPIT system has two legs, a sending functionality and a receive functionality. So what do I mean by a ZIPIT send? So when one is sending a ZIPIT transaction, this is where a customer wants to send funds to another customer who's banked or who has funds in another wallet. So this is when the financial institution of that customer, where they are banked or where their funds are residing, initiates a transaction on behalf of its customer to transfer funds to a recipient of another financial institution. The receive leg is the recipient of the funds, then receives those funds from that sending customer. Yeah, so that's the two legs of the ZIPIT. So there's a sending functionality as well as a receive functionality. Then in terms of the transacting channels, so the instant payment system ZIPIT has been enabled on 5 channels. The mobile, where the initiating customer accesses it via their USSD application or mobile application, whether it's a banked customer or a customer who has funds in a mobile money wallet. We have also initiated, enabled pause for the ZIPIT transactions to be processed. We've also enabled that on ATM, as well as internet and web-based systems. In terms of the ZIPIT transaction sets, they are as follows. So we have a bank-to-bank transaction set. This is where Lavender, for example, is sending funds from Bank A, and I'm sending to Sharon, who has an account with Bank B. So that's a bank-to-bank transaction set. And then the second one is where I'm sending money from my bank account to a mobile wallet account. So for example, I'm sending money maybe from Bank A to mobile wallet A, and vice versa. We've also enabled someone with funds in a mobile wallet to then move funds from their mobile wallet to the bank account. And then the third one is the mobile wallet to mobile wallet, where transfer of funds is being made possible to move funds from one mobile wallet, so mobile wallet A to mobile wallet B, and the same mobile wallet B, vice versa, to mobile wallet A. So these are the transaction sets we've enabled across ZIPIT. Next slide. Okay, so the next slide is showing the rules, technical specifications, and messaging of ZIPIT. So the ZIPIT rules, all our members on Zimswitch have the rules that are now highlighting the messaging, the type of messaging, also the query and resolution steps, as well as the obligations and risks the participants incur. All these we provide to every member when they join, and they are aware of the rules when they're processing funds across the ZIPIT channel. We also have referral docs that we can also provide, that we provide to the members so that they then use them for when there is any issues that they need to address. In terms of the ZIPIT payment messaging, initially, we started with very low messaging where it was just a message that is saying Sharon has received funds from Lavender, and then there's just a reference number in case of a query. But over the years, and as we continuously enhanced the ZIPIT platform so that it is in line with AML issues, as well as it can be used for other use cases, we then enhanced the messaging to increase the identity information in the payments message, such that a confirmation request is now displayed for the sender to verify the receiver details. So what do I mean by that? This is when Lavender, who's sending funds to Sharon, when I send, then there's a message that comes back and look up to then say, confirm you are sending such and such an amount to such and such a person who holds an account at such and such entity, such that the customer then confirms before sending in case there's an issue with maybe an incorrect digit that has been placed. So this has enhanced the ZIPIT transaction set such that it has reduced the errors, and it has also increased the use cases that can be used, as I will explain later in the next slide. Then in terms of the technical standards, the ZIPIT system operates on the ISO 8583, which is an international standard, the credit push messaging standard. This system also supports non-ISO 853 messages through the Zimswitch API gateway, which converts any standards to ISO 8583. So you'll find as our members continuously increase on the Zimswitch network, there will be some members who do not have the standard on their system, the ISO 8583. So what we did is we then assisted these members by providing them a gateway such that they can send a ZIPIT message in any format that their system allows the message to be carried. And then when it gets to our gateway, we then convert it such that the messaging is in line with the ISO 8583. Why we did this was so that we then ensure that the standardization of the messages, which is the lookup message, whether it's the financial message, as well as the reversal messaging, such that the standardization across every member, regardless of whether they are a commercial bank or a mobile money wallet. So this assisted us in ensuring that every member is able to push that message in the same standard format for easy customer convenience, and as well as for query and resolution issues. In terms of settlement, so ZIPIT transactions are settled on a T+1 basis, on a net settlement basis. What do I mean by that? We then ensure that net settlement then means that the person that at the end of the day, or the entity that at the end of the day who is owing, is the one who pays. So we are looking at the ZIPIT transactions that were sent, the values, versus the ZIPIT transactions that financial institution A received. Then the net settlement is what the financial institution pays on the following business day. So that is how we do the settlement of the transactions when they come across the ZIPIT channel. And then in terms of query resolution, because of the immediacy of ZIPIT, it being an instant payment where the recipient is able to access that funds in real time, any query resolution is done amongst the participants through bilateral engagements. And Zimswitch then comes in where there is disputes that we then arbitrate by then, because we have an overview of all the transactions, then we have to then arbitrate and ensure that both financial institutions resolve the issues that are at hand. So this is the overview of the rules, the technical specifications, as well as messaging. I'll now move to the next slide where I'm showing the ZIPIT journey, how we started and where we are now. Okay, so this slide is highlighting the journey of where we started, where we had teething issues until we get to where the instant payment solution is. So you'll find in 2011, we had one use case, which was the P2P transfer, where one could just send money from person to person. In 2015, we then enhanced ZIPIT such that it carried enriched messages across, such that these were now appearing on the customer's bank statement. So it then facilitated for a new use case where one is able to pay bills, fees, and rentals, because then the recipient of the funds was able to then see through their bank statement or their statement from their service provider to say who were the funds coming from. Initially, we could not do that because the messaging was not enriched, but we then enriched it in 2015. In 2018, we then also increased we then increased the use case for ZIPIT to process bulk disbursements of loans. This was necessitated because of the mandate to then also be financially inclusive, where maybe there were government disbursements that were needed for a large section of people, but there will be small value. So we then introduced ZIPIT Direct, which then managed to process B2P as well as B2B salaries, transfer, in bulk. In 2020, we then introduced another use case where you'll find our market has got a higher number of small to micro enterprises. So we also needed a solution to assist the financial institutions to also acquire transactions from the small to medium scale enterprises. We then introduced ZIPIT Smart, which then facilitated these small to medium scale enterprise merchants to be able to receive transactions using a simple merchant code. So how this worked, one would then initiate, for example, lavender. I want to pay the lady at the market for my vegetables. Then I'm going to initiate a ZIPIT transaction from my mobile. Then I'll say pay $2 for the lady who's selling tomatoes. I will then put the merchant code with the lady selling tomatoes at the market has displayed. I'll put that merchant code. And that merchant code is linked to the vendor's bank account as well as phone number. And once the transaction is successful, the vendor is able to see a message on their phone to say, transaction complete, you have received $2 from Lavender. So this ensured that the instant payment system now incorporated the small to medium scale merchants who were not being serviced by, I suppose, financial institutions because of the model where they've got very small revenue and turnover in a month. So this use case has been a very good use case for the financial inclusion mandate that we had been given by the regulator. And then in 2021, we also introduced ZIPIT QR. This use case was also still to serve the SME sector, but to then increase or better the customer journey, where instead of having to input digits, it was just to scan the QR code and then the transaction is processed just via the QR. So it also improved the convenience and the user journey of the paying customer. In 2021, we then also introduced ZIPIT web services. This one, like I mentioned earlier, was to facilitate the small members that were coming onto the switch that did not have the ISO 8583 standard that the ZIPIT channel rides on. So we facilitated this to such that the member financial institutions were able to connect and consume the ZIPIT, even if they are not based on the ISO 8583 standard. And then last year in 2024, we then introduced ZIPIT 3.0, which is where we are now with the solution, where a lookup functionality, as I mentioned earlier, is being enabled to say, confirm you want to pay funds before you send the transaction. And we've seen that this has enhanced the success rate of financial transactions going across the channel and reduced any errors significantly. I'll move over to the implementation challenges we've had. Okay, so the first one is the go-to-market by the industry. You'll find because of different levels that each member was at in terms of their maturity or infancy in instant payments, the journey for every member to have enabled ZIPIT took a bit of time. You'll find we had full interoperability only in 2020. This is 9 years from when we started, when we implemented the solution. So it took 9 years for each member, each of the 28 members that we have, to then enable ZIPIT as a channel for their end users. Then in terms of the messaging, the enriched messaging, the challenge we faced was on the limited details, where the system at inception only required a bank account number or a mobile phone number if it is a mobile money wallet, with only a reference number tag for each transaction. So this limited the system to just P2P use cases, as any payments such as bills were difficult to allocate a sender and purpose. Okay. We also faced a high incidence of errors where there was a high rate of transaction failures due to funds crediting the wrong recipient, as there was no mechanism to check accuracy of receiver details. I also mentioned that in the previous slide where we then introduced ZIPIT 3.0. So I think in a nutshell, in terms of challenges, these are the challenges we faced in our journey to have an instant payments that is fully interoperable. I think I'll move to my last slide. So in terms of lessons learned, I think I'll pick on these three, which were very key. So full interoperability requires regulatory support. So there is need for regulatory support to reduce time financial institutions or members on your network to onboard the solution to ensure the benefits of an IPS is reaped early. You'll find full interoperability is necessary for instant payments to work. So for us, we do get the regulatory support through mandates, where our regulator supports us by enforcing mandates to every financial institution, such that they are given a time frame to say by such and such a time you should have onboarded this solution, such that the public is able to benefit fully. Because then if there's no full interoperability, then you'll find maybe users are only able to send to maybe 15 out of the 28 banks, which causes friction and delays the financial inclusion mandate and the acceleration of digital payments. Then in terms of instant payments requiring transaction limits, that's another lesson we learned. Here you'll find immediate availability of instant payment then necessitates volume and value limits to be in place to reduce exposures that may arise due to issues like financial terrorism and money laundering. So early on, we learned that lesson, and then we implemented limits on ZIPIT such that there was a limit on the volume as well as frequency. One could send a certain number of ZIPIT transactions per day as well as the value, and there was a value cap at the end of the month. So this then ensured that the instant payment channel was not used for illegal activities. And then I think the last one was on the need for enriched data, such that when you are doing instant payments, there is need to ensure that the messaging is very enriched. It carries all the necessary details, such as the name and the surname of the sender, the purpose of the funds. There's also a confirmation that comes to ensure that the person who's initiating the transaction has inputted the correct details. Also the ID number. This also gives visibility to the regulator, where they need to be able to track how whether the transactions are being done legally, as well as for even you as the users to ensure that maybe when you're doing disbursements, then you are able to see that the funds are sent to the right person. So this is when we introduced ZIPIT 2.0. And then also in terms of enriched data, for you to increase your use cases, the sender and receiver details are also key, such that the instant payments is not just a P2P, but then it also carries P2B, B2P, and merchant payments, such that it becomes an inclusive payment system. And then lastly, in terms of confirmation of transaction details, this also helps to reduce errors of funds crediting wrong recipients. I think the last one would be just maybe the future journey of ZIPIT is just to say now we are now looking at not just domestic, but also to go towards regional to cater for remittance. Such that the whole financial inclusive journey is across not just in Zimbabwe, but across to our neighboring countries and beyond. Thank you. I'll hand over back to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Lavender, for this great presentation. I see a lot of comment on the chat. People are appreciating the presentation. This is really well done. And we can see the amazing journey of ZIPIT. And I mean, starting from 2011 to now, all the great milestone with more and more use cases being introduced, P2P, B2B, B2P, etc. So this is great. And for your information, the audience, ZIPIT is part of the SIPS report as a case study and is considered as at the progress level in terms of inclusivity spectrum. So they are almost near to the mature level, so which is really a great case for the ecosystem. So we are now opening up the floor for questions, and I see already one question popping up here relating to fraud. So Lavender, someone is asking what security measures has ZIPIT put in place around authentication and real-time transaction monitoring to minimize fraud on the platform?
Sorry, come again. So I didn't get that. Please come again.
So the question is, what security measures has ZIPIT put in place around authentication and real-time transaction monitoring to minimize fraud on the platform?
Oh, okay. We have a risk and compliance framework in place that is in line with policies that are aligned to instant payments, as well as regulatory policies. And I know my counterpart will speak on that when she does her risk and compliance Q&A.
Okay. So the next question is there a centralized call center for customer care for clients using services from their provider? If so, how is it organized?
Okay, I will take that. So in terms of customer care, you'll find all our members have a 24/7 customer care call center. So they become the first point of call for any issues. So because from our setup, the customer remains the customer for the commercial bank or the financial institution. And then thereafter, if there's any issues or disputes, like I mentioned earlier, that's when we then deal with our member to then resolve that dispute. But essentially, the bank or the financial institution has a 24/7 customer care for any query.
Thank you, Lavender. The next question is related to fees. Are there any fees required for a participant to enter the system? And if so, does the amount vary depending on the participant's profile, whether you are an IMF or a bank or MMP?
Okay, so this is membership fees to join Zimswitch, or are you talking about the actual transaction fees for ZIPIT? Just for clarity.
To join the system, so the switch.
Okay, so in terms of joining the switch, we have a membership fee that cuts across every member, which is paid quarterly. So each member, before they come onto the switch, before even they pay the fees, they have to meet the regulators' standards and requirements, whether it's deposit taking, whatever they're coming on as, they first meet the regulatory requirements. Then when they come to the switch, they also meet our requirements in terms of their platforms being secure, etc. And then there is a quarterly fee that we charge each member. And it's the same across.
Okay, I think we'll take two more questions before we switch to the panel discussion for the sake of time. The next question, is ZIPIT commercially sustainable? What is it? What is its business model, and does it raise costs for customers? And then they want example for clarity.
Okay, so for us as Zimswitch, because like I mentioned earlier, our mandate is for financial inclusion. So we charge a minimal fee. For example, in this instance, it's a percentage of the transaction amount. So Zimswitch will charge 1%. And then the member or the financial institution that has the customer will also then charge their own transaction fees, but we have we don't control what the end financial institution charges to the customer. But essentially, we just charge a percentage of the transaction amount.
Okay. And then the last question, what would you do differently? You presented the journey, the lessons you've learned, the challenges. What would you do differently throughout your implementation experience?
Okay, I think from the onset, what was key in terms of the lessons learned was ensuring that we have regulatory support fully, such that right from the onset, we have full support of the industry and full adoption, because for an instant payments, especially for financial inclusion, it should not take that long, like 9 years that I had alluded to. So I think differently we would have just gotten a regulatory support from the onset, and also then get industry support right from the onset, such that it does not become a business decision, but actually an industry-wide adoption for one financial inclusion mandate.
Thank you very much, Lavender, for the great presentation. The conversation is going on, and you can still ask questions, dear audience. So we are now switching to the panel discussion, and I'm inviting my colleague Serge to take the floor for that one.
Thank you very much, Berry, and hello everyone. So let's go to the panel discussion. We are going to welcome our distinguished panelists. We have on the panel Charlom, Tsiga. Charlom is currently the Risk and Compliance Manager at Zimswitch Technologies. She's a seasoned risk and compliance professional with expertise in governance, enterprise risk management, regulatory compliance, financial crime, data protection, information security, and business continuity within the financial services and telecommunications sector. Welcome, Charlom. If you can
thank
just...
you.
Okay, great. I think your camera is on. Thank you. We also have on the panel Faideth, Foto. Faideth is a distinguished banking executive with over 30 years of experience in the financial services industry, specializing in digital payments and customer-centric banking solutions. She currently serves as the Senior Manager, Convenience Banking at FBC Bank, where she leads initiatives in retail and e-commerce, and also holds the role of Vice President of the Electronic Payment Association of Zimbabwe, EPAZ. Welcome, Faideth.
She has little, yeah, she's joining us.
She's joining us. Okay, sorry. And then we also have Plounne Oyunge, who I believe is there. Yes. And Plounne is the Chief Growth Officer at Integrated Payment Services Limited, IPSL, Kenya, driving strategic growth and risk management for inclusive, instant, and affordable payments. With over 15 years of digital finance, she has championed financial inclusion, previously leading government payment digitization at FSD Kenya and expanding digital banking channels at Cooperative Bank of Kenya. Welcome, Plounne. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Serge.
We pretty much appreciate the presentation of ZIPIT, Instant Payment System. Lavender was kind enough to share some of the details around how they manage the customer queries. And we must say that this is a particular pain point for IPSs in Africa, where very few are able to, or at the moment, to build consumer recourse mechanism. So, Charlom, we would like to know, we would like you, if possible, to elaborate on the experience of ZIPIT in building consumer recourse dispute resolution mechanisms within the IPS. What has been your experience? Thank you.
Thank you. And I concur, trust is a critical factor in the acceptance and adoption of digital payments. And in the context of financial transactions, trust really refers to the confidence and belief that consumers have in the financial products and services they use. So it's a critical factor. I'll just take you through a scenario which we experienced around the time I joined Zimswitch. So we were conducting our annual DR test, and this was prior to us implementing enhanced technology around active. So the process would actually have significant downtime of about 20 minutes where services will be unavailable. So at some point, when we then activated the services, one of the things that we noticed is the first transaction around midnight was from a popular club, where I suppose that customer had been stressed out, having enjoyed their night out, and they were caught off guard trying to make a payment, and the payment method failed. You can imagine the anxieties around this and the trust erosion, and obviously the behavioral change that would have come through from that customer. I'm sure they would carry cash when going out rather than relying on the digital services. So as a customer, issues like service outage affect them. Issues of fraud also affect them. And this is one of the things that we focused on as Zimswitch. Elaborating on our framework, our key trust drivers that we focus on as Zimswitch are reliability, security, and fairness across the platform. This is in an effort for us to build consumer trust. Our framework has an overarching consumer protection framework. It focuses on safety and security, query and dispute management, as well as consumer education and awareness, which are fundamental to customers interacting with our platform. So in terms of consumer protection, we're glad to report that our regulator has actually implemented at a national level a consumer protection framework, which was issued in 2017 under Section 4C of the Banking Act. So this framework defines consumer rights and protection principles that market players must uphold. Zimswitch has entrenched this framework in participation rules and guidelines, as earlier alluded to by Lavender, where we have our user manual, which outlines such rules and guidelines for our participant. And non-compliance with this framework is subject to sanctions and penalties. So I'll start by touching on what we've done in terms of ensuring safety and security, which really, if implemented adequately, will actually reduce issues of erosion of customer trust and also feed into our query resolution process. So according to a GSMA report that I once read, I think it was issued in March 2024, loss of funds to fraud in mobile money can lead to a loss of trust in digital financial services, undermining financial inclusion and global development goals. So as our regulator has attested to that, implementing a global framework that ensures that all online banking channels are safe and secure. So this is now an issue of compliance on our part and on our member institutions. In terms of safety and security, issues that we've seen include issues of SIM swap, account takeover, social engineering, friendly fraud, incorrect beneficiaries, and system failure. So these are the common typologies that we've seen across our platform being reported through our query resolution framework. In terms of safety and security, Zimswitch really upholds issues of security. And to mitigate fraud and security breaches, we've implemented standardization or use of international standards. We implement ZIPIT in terms of the ISO 8583 standard, ensuring consistency and efficiency in transaction processing. This, we hope, will actually reduce issues of failed transaction, issues that drive inefficiency, eroding customer trust. We also have secure encryption protocols that we implement. And I think there was a question on on authentication, where we implement channel level authentication for the transaction. That is at the point that a customer is initiating the transaction, whether on USSD or a mobile app or on the ATM, POS or internet channel. That is where a user inputs authentication credentials issued by their bank. We also have implemented a robust certification process that ensures participations adhere to the technical and security standards that Lavender was speaking to in the implementation of the product. Like Lavender spoke to, we've implemented ZIPIT 2.0, which enhances transaction messaging, giving rich data, including sender and receiver details, reference details. This actually assists when we are conducting queries because you already know the names and details of both the sender and the receiver, making it easier to actually address queries. Then, like Lavender also put, we've implemented ZIPIT 3.0, which adds a lookup functionality. And what we are seeing is also a reduced volume of queries because customers now know who they are actually sending the funds to, or they have confirmation prior to actually initiating the transaction. This reduces customer errors and also the risk of fraud. Challenges that we've actually seen around safety and security obviously relate to the rapid evolution of the threats. And this requires us to keep pace with increasing sophisticated fraud tactics. Also, a lack of collaboration and information sharing on fraud and security incidents amongst market players, obviously to protect their reputations, but it limits our ability to implement effective countermeasures. Also, due to the velocity of transactions, I think answering one of the questions, we've noted a need for real-time fraud monitoring. So previously, you would actually find we would input a rule-based monitoring, but we've seen that there are inefficiencies around this. And Zimswitch is currently in the process of implementing a real-time AI-driven monitoring solution, which should be rolled out in this year. In terms of the actual query and dispute management process, we have a centralized system, and queries are largely classified into fraud, processing errors, and customer disputes. So in terms of the actual process, when a customer has a query, they lodge their query with their financial institution, be it a bank or mobile money operator. The financial institution analyzes the query, and where the query is valid and affecting the customer's account or wallet alone, they resolve the query on their end. One of the examples that I can speak to on this is where duplicate debiting has occurred on the customer's account. So if the financial institution investigates and notices that only one leg in terms of the credit was done, but we've got 2 debits, they just reverse on their end. Then where the query actually involves the beneficiary institution, the sending institution lodges the query with the beneficiary institution. The beneficiary institution will perform their analysis and in need request for any additional information necessary to resolve that query. The beneficiary institution may accept or reject the query. If they do reject, then this leads to arbitration by Zimswitch. So we've not only left it to market players to do as they wish, we have set timelines for resolution of the query, which is 48 hours. And if they have not agreed, then we step in from an arbitration perspective. By the way, the 48 hours is actually stipulated in the regulator's framework. So the key challenges that we've seen around query and dispute management is ZIPIT allows rapidity, which means the beneficiary is receiving the funds instantly in real time. Thereby, if there is an error, it may be difficult to recover these funds as customers then tend to use the funds, even though they might not necessarily be theirs. An example is if I send to an incorrect account, by the time I even lodge the query, usually the beneficiary of those illegitimate funds would have actually consumed them. And then the recovery of these utilized funds are largely then dependent on good hope faith collections, which sometimes can be time consuming. There is also a growing lack of integrity amongst customers, resulting in low recovery rates in such instances. So previously, customers would query any funds that come into their account before using them if they were not expecting a credit. But you actually find that of late, customers will utilize funds and then wait for the bank to actually chase them up, but they would have actually benefited from them. So in terms of from both the safety and security aspect and also the use of our query and dispute management system, we've noticed that consumer education and awareness is key. So if customers know how to utilize a system, they are able to safeguard themselves as they use those platforms. Issues of do not share your passwords or secret PINs, issues of maybe checking or verifying the sender before initiating a transaction, also how to stay safe in terms of using digital solutions. So all this, we have established a program that we implement. We implement it in terms of Zimswitch, but also jointly with our participants and in some instances with the regulator. So we've noted that if you have a growing awareness, this actually reduces customer errors and fraud. and customers are able to exercise security hygiene in the use of the ZIPIT product across all channels. Issues of even transparency in cost also reduces queries, as some of the queries that come through are related to the charges. So this is another aspect where we've seen education and awareness coming in critical. So as Zimswitch, this is largely how we have dealt with the issue of ensuring customer trust, especially in relation to reducing issues of fraud. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Charlom, for this comprehensive answer. We are really glad to see the experience of ZIPIT in building this type of systems. And I like the fact that you have a whole framework around the consumer protection, consumer trust, right? That does not involve only building the mechanism, but also involves educating the customer so that he knows better how to use the service and then is able to use it without more easily, let's say. Talking about the trust of the customers, another aspect is usually the cost of the transaction. So Faideth, you are leading the EPAZ association. We know that high transaction costs deter adoption of digital payments. So how EPAZ is, through its members, advocating for affordable fee models to promote increased transactions and financial inclusion?
Thank you very much, Serge. Maybe I'll start by just advising who EPAZ is. That's an Electronic Payment Association of Zimbabwe, which is an association made up of Zimbabwe member financial institutions, whose mandate is to promote electronic payment transactions by facilitating cooperation among various stakeholders in the electronic payment arena. Yes, I believe financial inclusion is widely acknowledged as an important driver of sustainable economic growth, fostering equitable opportunities and bolstering economic resistance for both individuals and communities. At the heart of financial inclusion lies the concept of affordability, which is a fundamental pillar that enables individuals and businesses to access and benefit the formal financial products and services. So for many low-income households and small business, the cost that is associated with using formal financial services can be a significant barrier, effectively excluding them from participating in the financial system and limiting their participation. This includes high maintenance fees, minimum balance requirements, and sustainable transaction costs that make accessing basic financial services, such as bank accounts, transactions through certain digital channels, and mobile banking products unaffordable for those with limited resources. As a result, these individuals often resort to informal and inferior financial alternatives, perpetuating their cycles of financial and economic exclusion and limiting their opportunities for economic advancements. I will maybe talk about some of the challenges that then are associated with the high transaction costs in digital payments. As we understand, digital payments are supposed to make the transactions cheaper. So by making the transaction high cost, it then affects the use of the digital channels. So at high level, I will just talk about 5 challenges that then affect the high transaction costs in digital payments. Number 1, increase the barriers to market participation. When transaction costs are high, they act as a barrier to entry for businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, which are the SMEs, which may find it difficult to absorb these costs. This can limit their ability to participate in large markets and also potentially stifle their economic growth. Then disincentivizing small-scale transactions. For consumers, high transaction fees can discourage small-scale transactions, particularly for low-value transactions. This can limit the use of digital platforms in everyday transactions and undermine the potential to streamline financial activities. From a business perspective, we realize if the transactions are high, they will reduce the profitability for the businesses. So they can experience a reduction in profitability due to the cost of processing digital payments. These costs impact the pricing strategies, leading to high consumer price or low margins. They can also impact on rural and underserved communities. The digital payment systems can be useful in rural or underserved areas where access to traditional financial services may be limited. However, if the transaction costs are high, they can make these systems less attractive and hinder the benefits they offer to the population. They can also undermine the advantages of the digital payments, because digital payments, they do bring convenience to the transacting public. So by the high costs, they may then offer numerous disadvantages, such as digital payments offer numerous advantages, such as faster payment speeds, reduced costs, and easy of use. However, if the transaction costs can undermine some of these benefits and make the digital channels less appealing compared to the traditional methods. So the question that may then arise is, how then is the industry advocating to alleviate the above challenges so that we promote increased digital transactions as well as financial inclusion? So as EPAZ, we work together with the regulator as well as Zimswitch. But from the member banks do offer low KYC accounts. These come cheaper to the transacting public, the customers, because they do not charge the monthly service fees. We also have wallets from the MNOs, which are also low KYC. And also member banks, they also have their own wallets. So because they come at low cost, they do promote financial inclusion. The market also has adopted a tier pricing model, which is split between transactions below USD $5 and above. So as an industry, like I indicated, that we are regulated by the central bank. So the central bank came in and introduced and mandated all member financial institutions to zero rate transactions below $5. So as EPAZ, our mandate is then to ensure all the member financial banks have implemented, have complied with the regulatory requirement. So we continuously engage between the industry and the regulator. There was also an exemption for monthly bank requirements or service charges for accounts with conservative daily balances of $100 and below. This was also mandated from a central bank perspective, where they said for any account that has a minimum balance of USD $100 or below, this must not be charged bank maintenance, a monthly bank maintenance fee, which then gives the customer more funds to make transactions. We also work hand in hand with the government, where we get government support in implementing the transaction fees. In 2022, the government of Zimbabwe removed the IMTT for transactions below $5, which was also a move to promote, to lower transaction fees as well as promote financial inclusion. So in Zimbabwe, if a customer does a transaction that is below $5 USD, they will not be charged the IMTT. There is continuous awareness progress to drive adoption of the digital payments, which is in collaboration with the government, Zimswitch, and the member banks. As well, from a government support perspective, they have mandated that, so from a central bank perspective, they've mandated that promoting of business conditions where each member bank must be transparent in their pricing, where they share the business conditions on their websites or even in their banking rules, so that customers are able to have a view of the transactions that each member bank is charging. So in summary, there is a need for continuous collaboration, encouragement among the stakeholders within the industry to work together to develop affordable and conclusive digital payment systems. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Faideth. Your intervention really highlights the critical role of having a central bank that enables payments that will be affordable, but also the role of the industry associations like yours to make sure that the financial institutions and their members comply and find ways to make this wish from the regulator realities on the ground. Thank you very much for your intervention. And we would like now to turn to Plounne to address another aspect of inclusivity. If we want customers to have access to financial services, well, that will be affordable, but that will be accessible. It's also an imperative that IPS instant payment systems across Africa become or deploy as cross-domains instant payment systems. So allowing interoperability between the different payment instruments, payments accounts, like, for example, the bank accounts and the wallets and payments accounts. So how is IPSL addressing technical and regulatory barriers to achieve this cross-domain interoperability, particularly for underserved rural areas, rural users reliant on mobile money? Plounne?
Right. Thank you, Serge. Okay, so before I get into the details of how IPSL is addressing this challenge, allow me to just introduce who PesaLink is. PesaLink is an instant and interoperable open switch that powers account-to-account transaction with 365, 24/7, in terms of availability. From an access point of view, you can access PesaLink through your mobile app, through internet banking, through USSD, and we are now looking to go into agent-assisted platform. We've talked about partnerships or the ecosystem, what it looks like. Currently, there are over 70 participants in our network. These participants are, they are cross banks. So we have almost all the banks, actually 38 out of 39 of the banks in our network. We have the SACCOs. If you know a bit about Kenya, and I think this must be the same across Africa, SACCOs are a very powerful financial service. So we do have SACCOs also in our network. We have telcos, and we have a telco, and we also have MFIs. From a messaging standard, we power both ISO. Our messaging standard is based both on ISO 200.2.2 and ISO 85.83. And as of today, we have processed over 1 trillion transactions. Now, from a partnership and a network growth perspective, we are continuously having engagement, obviously, with the stakeholders to ensure that whoever is not in the network is also becomes part of the network. Right. So I can see we have participants that have joined us from across Africa and may not have had may not know a lot about the financial services ecosystem. So I think it's important, even as I'm answering this question, to provide some sort of background on or context. The financial services ecosystem in Kenya has made remarkable progress, and you can tell this because it's been driven largely by the mobile technology. And allow me to share some statistics to just back up that statement. From a mobile phone devices point of view, the penetration rate is at 131.5%. The adoption rate for smartphones is at 72%. And because we're also talking about the underserved, who are most likely going to have feature phones, their penetration rate is 59%. When you look at financial inclusion, we're at about 83% in Kenya. And there's evidence showing that a lot of vulnerable groups in low-income segments have access to these phones and can access financial services through this phone. Now, that picture looks very rosy, but unfortunately, lack of interoperability in this financial ecosystem has led to we have not been able to unlock real financial inclusion because of that lack of interoperability. Because what this has led to is very high costs, trust issues in the system, delays in delivery of payments, those sort of challenges, and I'll be able to address exactly what IPSL has done to address these challenges. Now, so of course, I've already talked about what our ecosystem looks like. So from a strengthening of infrastructure for purposes of inclusion, you can see that we already, I think, have maybe 80–90% already included. A big portion is mobile money. We do have one telco that is already a part of the network, and like I said, we're still having discussions to ensure that all the other mobile money operators also join the network. Now, I've talked about SACCOs specifically because they serve the low-income segment. That is another wallet. That is another segment that we are very keen to serve and unlock the potential and make sure that it's also interoperable. From a regulatory engagement, and there was a question around fast payment, we are continuing to have a discussion with the central bank, and we support stakeholders in discussions around having a fast payment system in place. And why this is important is because we feel we are confident that we can achieve standardization, which is also very important. And my colleagues in the panel have also discussed that. So one of the things that we have done and very important by IPSL is to standardize customer. We have tried as much as possible to standardize customer experience. The first thing we did develop scheme rules, and we expect that all the participants are going to adhere by the rules of the rules of the scheme. Very difficult to enforce, especially when, because you have mobile money participants, you have banking sector participants. But we are also working together with the central bank from a regulatory point of view to ensure that we can standardize this as much as possible. Why this is important, again, this was alluded to by my colleagues, is to boost customer confidence in use of use of the solution. So, coming up with friendly interfaces when you're talking about low-income segments is very key, so that they can easily, navigate what the solution looks like. What we have right now is we have our standard user face, the experience, what the experience should look like. But we are not able to enforce this from our partner point of view. So we have multiple implementation and different implementation of what PesaLink looks like. When we can enforce that standard, then it becomes more predictable. If you're a user, you know exactly where to find a PesaLink on your app, and how to access it on USSD. The other thing also that we have done, and which also my colleagues have talked about, is to address the issue of dispute resolution. Now, for low-income segments specifically, and when you're talking about interoperability, movement of funds from one wallet to an ecosystem to another ecosystem, then this becomes very important. Even with our scheme rules in place, it's still a bit difficult when funds are, for example, sent to a wrong wallet, a wrong bank account. It becomes very difficult sometimes to get the money back. But we have tried to build rules around that. We have described rules around how that can be done, and how we've also reduced the error rate. We have implemented payment verification. So it allows you to verify before you send who you're sending the funds to. And on successful transaction, you also receive a receipt to show you where the funds have been sent to. We do have a call center, but this call center is primarily for our partners. The first point of contact, of course, is where you bank, or your fintech, or the mobile money operator. To boost confidence again, and we're very proud of where PesaLink has come from. We managed to reduce the error rate completely. We've managed to maintain the reliability of the system at 98%. And in terms of uptime, we are pleased with a 99% record. Now, we can do all this, but still, there are challenges in the ecosystem, which we try to address through stakeholder engagement. So we try to talk to our partners as much as possible, and we also try to get feedback from the customer in terms of usage. What are the challenges? Why they're not using the system, or rather the solution, just to try and build that up, and put that, embed that in our customer, in our product journey. When we need to upgrade or deploy certain improvements in our solution. Now, from a use case perspective, I say that we are account to account, but when you really, we power account to account transfers. But when you really look at delve down into the detail of what these account to account transfers are, they are P2P transactions, they are P2B transactions, and business to business transactions, and we also power government transactions from a person to government payment. We are currently in discussions with government. We would like to, as also to and very keen and can do it, to also power G2P transactions. And why this is important, very important, especially for the low income segment, is because of the costs that that can be incurred. The cost is still very high. Obviously, that's the biggest challenge, and I don't want to belabor the points that my colleagues have talked about. The costs still remain very high, and especially for PesaLink, because we do have what we call affordable pricing, and it is affordable, but we do not have control of the final pricing to the customers. So for the cost to really remain low, it takes a whole approach from a whole ecosystem, so that we can reduce the transactions and increase. We can reduce the pricing and increase the transactions. That can also cater for low income segments. So we do think there's an opportunity to open up completely the ecosystem. If we're talking about fast payment, we're talking about interoperability, so that we power more than just what I've talked about, the P2P, the P2Bs, and we are working very diligently to make sure that we can put out other use cases. Talked about G2P, but we're also looking at PesaLink Pay. We're also looking at enabling everyday transactions. The very low value transactions, if we are to reach low income segments. So that is what we have done. Very briefly from a PesaLink perspective, and I can see we are running out of time. So, but I'm happy to answer any other questions from the participants.
Absolutely, Plounne. Thank you. This is very, very enlightening, and congratulations for the very, very, very impressive statistics you presented. And it's great to see how you spoke about interoperability, but you rightly put that under the fact that it's not only again about the mechanisms that are there to allow just to transfer from one account to another, but it's also what you have around. So the cost of those transactions, the trust you build with the customer to make those transactions and so on. So it's quite important. So with that, let's turn to the participants for, I believe, well, maybe a short Q&A, Berry, because I think we are out of time.
Yes, we are running out of time, but we have so many questions. So I don't know how we want to go about that. Maybe I propose that we take some questions from the participant, and then we'll see, we'll find a way to answer all the questions and then share with you later on. So I think we'll come back to we are coming back to the ZIPIT presentation. And one question is for Lavender or Charlom, what were the challenge during the onboarding process of banks? We can't hear you, Lavender.
Sorry, I was just having a technical challenge. What's the question? Please come again.
So it's what were the challenges during the onboarding process of banks?
Okay. So in terms of the onboarding process, you'll find project prioritization by each member, as well as the perceived value of the solution differed, including customers, especially where most members at the time were commercial banks. But as the informal sector grew, and you'll find the mobile money wallets also, they moved away from just airtime and they joined the payment space. Then the value proposition increased, and now every stakeholder requires a solution. So it was just a matter of how each member was seeing the value at the time, as well as how they were prioritizing the need to have an instant payment solution.
Thank you very much. The next question will be for Charlom. At what stage in the ZIPIT payment process is sanctions screening conducted? And is it the responsibility of participant banks alone, or does ZIPIT perform any centralized screening or validation at the switch level? Charlom.
Thank you for that question. So in terms of sanction screening and AML compliance in general, the primary responsibility lies with the financial institutions who participate on both the sending and the receiving legs. Any sanction screening that we perform as Zimswitch are secondary and are just to verify or to cross-check.
Okay. Thank you very much. Another question also is related to fees. Are there any interchange fees prescribed for those cases for P2P, P2B, B2P? Lavender, maybe. You're on mute.
Yes, I've unmuted, sorry. I'll take that. So there are no interchange fees. Reason being, I'll take it on two aspects. You'll find unlike point of sale where there is need to motivate the acquirer to avail hardware such as those POS devices, which is a bit expensive. There is a need for interchange fees. But because ZIPIT or instant payments in this case rides on mobile phones, which proliferation, like I think the other speaker mentioned that it's really high, especially in Africa. This becomes a low cost infrastructure, as well as because instant payments drive financial inclusion, there is no interchange fees that we put on them. So it just remains just that those click fees to ensure that it remains a low cost solution.
The next
Across all
question for
the
Yeah, thank you very much, Lavender. The next question for Charlotte. How can instant payment systems like ZIPIT enhance their fraud detection and prevention capabilities without compromising on accessibility and user experience for financially excluded population? It's a great one.
Yes, definitely a great question, and one that we hope to answer in terms of the project that we are undertaking. So previously we were riding on the rules-based model, which has its inefficiencies, but also in terms of implementing an AI-based solution, you would then need to have the model actually learning over time so that you have a reduced number of false positives. So this is something that we are undertaking, hoping to use historic data as training, and hopefully by the time we implement, we will have a bit more efficiency. But what we've also seen is when you enable or empower the financial institutions that the users belong to make certain decisions on the fraud, they are more empowered. They have more historic participation by these customers. They know the trends in terms of the usage of these customers. The fraud monitoring also becomes a bit more efficient. So this is what we are hoping also to implement. So the solution will be central, but also having input from the financial institutions who participate and who own the customer.
Okay. So I have one more question for the ZIPIT. There's a lot, but I'll take one more question and then maybe give the floor to Plounne and Faideth if they want to chime in and share any last thought. So the question is, are there any plans to collaborate with other non-bank institutions, insurance providers, etc., to provide and promote additional financial services like insurance, credit, or is it already on the ZIPIT platform?
Okay, so you'll find that any service provider, like you've mentioned, the insurance, etc., already are riding on our members. So they are already consuming those services, the instant payment services, and as third-party payment service providers, where they are not registered as deposit taking, but they will ride under a bank, and then we avail the solutions to them. So this is already in place.
Thank you very much for the ZIPIT team. As I mentioned, we'll find a way to answer all the questions and share with the audience. So I'm turning to Plounne and Faideth. If there is one, let's say one thought, one last thing you would like to leave us with regarding your journey, what will it be? You are on mute, Plounne. You're on, okay, it's okay.
Thank you, Barry. So I think in conclusion, what I can say is, and regarding, there's so much more we wanted to share in this presentation, but obviously we ran out of time. You know, as we look at interoperability, it's really important that we all look at the issue around cost, because at the end of the day, if the costs remain high, then we're not going to have participants, and this cannot be done by by a particular switch or by a particular entity. It's important that the entire ecosystem, all the stakeholders, come to the table to find a way of reducing the cost. You know, if you're looking at, we really need to get to the details of what is driving the cost of transactions high, and explore and really unlock the full potential of interoperability. At IPSL, we are at the forefront of pushing for this in Kenya, and we invite all the other IPSs across Africa and all the IPSs also in Kenya to join IPSL in this endeavor. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a great call to action, and we are also sharing that call to action as AfricaNenda. Faideth, what the last perspective from the association? Anything you want to share?
Okay, thank you very much. So from the association, financial inclusion is very key, and also enabling low-cost transactions so that member banks can develop transactions that are low-cost, which then enable financial inclusion across the ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe Serge, before I hand over to you for wrap up, just allow me one question for Plounne that just pops up. Plounne, there's a question for you. With the central banks planning to launch a national fast payment system aimed at a universal interoperability, how is IPSL positioning PesaLink to remain relevant and competitive, especially in light of potential overlap with CBK's infrastructure?
Yes, that's an interesting question. I mean, of course, the discussions around this are ongoing, and a bit of a sensitive area here. As APSL, we remain very open to collaboration with the ecosystem players, and whatever solution is put on the table, we are happy to collaborate with all the other partners. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Serge, over to you for the wrap-up.
Thank you. Thank you, Berry. First, we would like really to thank all our speakers and panelists for this great session. We had on the webinar today ZIPIT, Zimswitch representatives that shared the success story of the ZIPIT instant payment system, including the description of the payment system, the use cases, the technical specifications, but it also focused a lot on the query resolution mechanisms that they have put in place, and really putting it in the perspective of a whole consumer protection framework that involves a lot of other activities around building also the education of the customers to use the service in a proper way. We had EPAZ that explained all the actions that they are doing to enforce the regulation that would boost the affordability of digital payments at the end of the day. While ZIPIT explained the pricing model where they charge 1% on every transaction, they explained that the transactions at the end of the day are charged. They are not in control of the transactions charged by the participants. And there we have EPAZ, basically working with the participants, with the governments, with the regulator, to make sure that affordability measures are well put in place by its members. And we had IPSL from Kenya explaining to us also all the activities they are running to push for further interoperability in Kenya. And that involves, for example, building standardized customer payment experience. That involves having also the right dispute resolution systems. And she mentioned at the end that it's quite important that to solve that issue of cost affordability, that all the stakeholders really collaborate around the same table to fix that problem. So I think we thank you all for your presence, and also the speakers for their generous insights that they offered today. And with that, I hand over to you, Berry.
Thank you very much, everyone, for staying online for so long. Thank you to the panelists, the speakers. Thank you, Serge, and my colleague Jacqueline. We invite you to download the ZIPIT case study on our website to learn more. It's both in English, French, and we also have the Arabic version, by the way. We also invite you to join our community of practice on LinkedIn, where you can share more about what is happening in the ecosystem, and also please follow us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitter, to have our latest news. With that said, we thank you very much, and then see you soon for another webinar. Thank you very much, and have a great end of day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.